We're back in action with the RotoHackers podcast, and it is either your semifinal or your quarterfinals, or you're one game away from the playoffs. Let's hit that intro. And ladies and gentlemen, we are back with another episode of the one and only RotoHackers podcast. My name is AJ Herschel, also known as The Kid, and y'all already know we are back with the one and only absolute stud himself, Mr. First Round Bye. It's Jared! And Judah Buddha is on assignment. He will not be joining us today. Jared, how are you doing today?
I'm doing pretty good. I don't want to jinx it, but it's been a pretty good week. We got a massive, we were just talking before we came on, we got a massive, just blast of Star Wars and Marvel and Pixar, material that got announced that's going to be coming down the pipe, or we got trailers to the stuff that new trailers to the stuff we already knew we were getting. So there's a lot of stuff in there that's going well. I think I'm probably getting a full-time job offer next week.
There we go.
Finally, again.
All right.
That will be nice. So I had my second round interview with a place, and then they want me to come in next week and kind of tour the place and all that. So
nice. That's awesome.
That's exciting. I don't know if I told you guys or mentioned it on air that I actually bought a PS5 and then sold it on eBay. I didn't buy it, pre-order it with the intention of selling it, but then I saw what they were going for. And so I'm like, okay, maybe I'll do that. And then it was supposed to arrive to the guy last Friday, not yesterday, but last Friday. And it just had just disappeared into the postal system. So he had been upset. He's freaking out. I'm freaking out. And then like midnight, or a little after midnight, I guess over in the morning, I started getting updates again for the first time in 8 days. Like, oh yeah, it arrived in Connecticut, and then it already passed through the destination facility, and it's on the way, and he got it this morning. So
all right.
And so then he canceled his because he had requested a refund, and so he canceled his request for refund. So that went well too. So it's like, and my fantasy week got off to a fairly good start, where I started the Rams defense in some places. One of my opponents that I need to beat started Cam Newton against me. So there were a couple other places that I wish I had started the Rams. I had the Seahawks too. And so the Seahawks are at home against the Jets, and that was a tough call. Yeah. But anyway, so for all the garbage of 2020, it's like a lot of pretty good things happening in 1 week here. So pretty good. How about you?
Nowhere near as eventful as your week, I'll tell you that much. I'm also happy about all the Marvel Star Wars information we got. I'm counting down the days before Wonder Woman comes out, because it's finally a movie that I can actually see in a theater. And unfortunately, I did not have the privilege of having the Rams defense. The only place I did have it was a place I got a first round bye. So yeah, you can imagine how helpful that one was.
Yeah.
And Cooper Kupp did fine. Robert Woods might kill me in one league, but the guy I need to lose in that league is playing a person who's not paying attention. So I'm pretty much sunk there unless I get a miracle happens. But dodged a bullet starting Cam Newton in two places. It's all right. It's not a bad start.
Yeah, just looking in on the RotoHackers listeners league here. Looks like you're going to be in probably a tight matchup with Thomas H. It's projected to be, as of now, which like you said, you've only had Cooper Kupp play, so that's the only player. But it's you're basically like a 1.5 point underdog, but that's pretty minimal. And Judah Buddha has gotten off to a little rougher start, where he started Damian Harris. who underperformed, and even worse was Henderson. Henderson apparently ended in week 13. We're in the Hinder postseason because he provided
off season, honestly.
In the off season, the Hinder off season. That's what this is. Yeah, he provided 0.5 points, and Judah Buddha's opponent, which it was doubly stinging because Judah Buddha's opponent, Slanting Chubb, started Cam Akers, who just had, I think 85 carries is what I believe it was. And he had 20 points, 20.4 points, and so Judah's already an 18-point underdog. So that's a tough start to and I feel the pain on Darrell Henderson because I have one league. It's my big money league, and there's just no running backs available. I had to start him. It's an outside shot where I needed like two teams to lose and then me to win and outscore them. So it's an outside shot anyway, but that may have finally just killed me there. But that's pretty painful. And I will say, that it's too bad Judah couldn't join us today. He said he forgot. He said he forgot, which is completely understandable because it's not like we do this regularly, like every Saturday or something like that. So completely understandable there.
It's very coincidental that he immediately goes down by about 20 points and then doesn't show up after starting the guy that he's been pushing for the entire year, who got him less than a point. What a coincidence.
It is interesting. Yeah.
I don't know. Cademan Bauer's already in the comments saying, well, I did not make the playoffs. Unfortunately, the legend of Scrappy Giraffe has been relegated to the consolation quarterfinals of the RotoHackers Listener League. Unfortunately, the Derrick Henry did not work out last week. Judah is on assignment this week, and Thomas H., who I've got in the comment section and in fantasy this week, he has no playable running backs. He's starting DeAndre Swift, and he just subbed in J.D. McKissick. Oh, great. We'll see if his wide receivers can bring a victory over me. Well, hopefully Adams and Thielen will do the same for me. It's going to be a wide receiver grudge match between us this week. And Lightning Bauer, good to see you in the comment section. It's a great weekend for some RotoHackers. You know what? I completely agree. I absolutely agree. If any of you guys got questions, comments, concerns, be sure to leave them in the comment section, as you already know.
Yeah, it's going to be interesting because I don't know actually how Judah set this league up. So I don't know. I guess like, and it doesn't say, which team I get next week. I assume I get the lower seed.
I think so. Yeah.
So if it's, if Slanting Chubb does go on to beat Judah, then I'm gonna get the winner of your game. But but if Judah somehow comes back and wins, then it would be one more Judah Jared matchup. So either way,
oh my goodness,
next week is going to be a very interesting week.
Absolutely. Oh my goodness. Honestly, at this point, I feel like Thomas and H and I are fighting I get to lose to Jared in the championship semifinals. Like it's really about pride at this point for the chance to get into the third place match.
You never know. I never really, honestly, I never really like going in as the number one seed in some ways because it just feels like your team has given you everything that it's had to give, and then it's going to just flop in the playoffs. So that's always my worry, but a lot of times I kind of build teams. I think I've said this before. I build teams to hopefully win in week 15, because that's where, if you're in a Yahoo pay league, you can triple your money. And then if I go on and win the championship, then that's great. That's just, icing on the cake. But normally I try to do that. This year it's I've got like a crazy winning percentage in my championship, or in the semifinal round, like 70, nearly 75% or something like that.
Very nice.
But this year, it's just been like whichever of my teams can get there, and these teams are not built to like dominate in week 15 or anything like that, because we've had, it's been such a train wreck of a season with injuries and everything. It's just like whoever you've got that can get you there. So I don't have the usual confidence that I have. Although I do like my roster in this league. It's a good roster. True. So it's always going to give me a pretty good shot.
Yeah. Well, we got some more comment sections. Before I get to that, if you all missed it last week, Judah Buddha received a message on Twitter from a certain running back. Let's run that back real quick.
I'm sorry, Judah McNeil, but you know what? I'm still the best.
So for ruining many of Judah's leagues, apparently this week, Derrick Henry sent Judah an apology. And of course, Jared and I think that Judah kind of deserved it at this point for dissing Derrick Henry.
Yeah, I think that was big of Derrick Henry to do that. Seeing how, he's basically been, one of fantasy's top running backs for the last couple of years and has routinely risen above Judah Buddha's doubts and delivered. And then to have just one bad week and then to apologize for that, I thought was very nice of him, and and he does, it is sort of a backhanded apology where he does establish that he is still the best, but but still, it was, it wasn't. Yeah.
Well, I'm still waiting for my apology from Christian McCaffrey, who decided to tweak his quad last week, apparently, and Matt Rule decided not to tell us, so I had to waste pulling him off my IR spot, losing someone on my bench in 4 different leagues, and now I'm gonna have to do that all over again. Jared, do you think there's any chance McCaffrey plays this year?
I think there's a chance, but one thing that we're seeing this year is just whatever lies we've gotten from coaches in the past have just been amplified times 1,000 this year, where, this this injury is not that bad. We think the guy's has a chance to play next week. And then, 8 Kenny Galladays later, the guy is still not playing. So, Joe Mixon, now it's sounding like Joe Mixon is, I would say probably not going to play the rest of the year. They've lost Burrow and, why would they bring him back? Right. Kenny Galladay, that's not looking good. Christian McCaffrey, Christian McCaffrey might have the best chance to play out of those 3 guys I just named. But if I were the Panthers, there's no way I would put him out there. He's the best running back in the league, probably. And you've got 3 games left. I haven't checked the standings to see exactly where the Panthers are, but I don't think they're. Let's see before I.
They're 4-8. They would need a lot of luck to get in.
Yeah, they're not making the playoffs. Yeah. So, if they were in the NFC East, sure.
Yeah, but, exactly.
But there's a lot of there's a lot between them and the playoffs. So, and even if they did, so there's no reason. And what's funny is I've already picked up Mike Davis in 2 leagues, and I think he's on the waiver wire on the waiver wire in 3 other leagues now. So we'll see if I get him. I'm sure somebody else is going to probably pick him up with a higher waiver priority. But that's crazy. Why would you, after everything that we've seen this season, would you think Christian McCaffrey, he'll be back, I'm sure. So I don't trust it. Please don't drop Mike Davis unless you're in one of my leagues and then drop him. But if you're a Christian McCaffrey owner, that's tough. That's tough. And he's got a great matchup next week. If he misses it, with the Green Bay lack of run defense.
Well, we got some more comments. Lightning Bauer asks, how about Snarks? Do you know what he's referencing here, Jared?
I do not.
Okay. But Allied Rivals, good podcast. Check it out. Brings up we're close to 100 subs, and that is true. We are very close to hitting 100 subscribers. So if you've got people who you can tell to subscribe to RotoHackers, hey, I get it. You don't want to tell them during the season because you don't want to get advice and discuss your own matchups with your rivals in the comment section. But hey, maybe you made the playoffs and they didn't, and they're fighting for 5th place. Now is the time to get them to subscribe. This is your opportunity. Thomas H said it's 2020. Something ridiculous has to happen in the playoffs. We gotta finish the character arc of the 2020 fantasy season. Something's got to happen.
Maybe, but I hope it's more like how a lot of modern shows sort of start setting up. Like Game of Thrones used to always basically have what was more like a season finale in season 9 out of a 10 episode season. And then they would start turning the page to the next season with episode 10. Right. I kind of hope that's what's going to happen with 2020, and that we go ahead and start turning the page on, 2020 is going to be a, brighter year, new year. So if we're past all that junk from 2020, I'd be okay with that.
Yeah, I felt bad because someone brought up the point of how like the Olympics are still being called the 2020 Tokyo Olympics, and there's a whole bunch of stuff that they were worried about. So someone just brought up to me, what happens if we hit December 31st and we just don't hit January 1st? What happens if time just outright stops and we never leave 2020?
Yeah, I don't know. I don't think I could deal. But yeah, 2020's got, let's see, we're on the 12th. So, it's got like 19 days. It's got 19 days to do something. Maybe that Mayan calendar was off by 8 years or so. And,
right, exactly.
It's gonna deliver something really bad here in the last few weeks.
Oh no. Todd Eldridge said, good to see you, man. Said leagues in 2-week playoff matchups already. Henry dumped, but Jefferson, Davis, Allen, and Zeke put him up by 10. He's going forward. Brady, Henry, Zeke, Metcalf, Jefferson, Davis, Hunter, Henry, Steelers, DJ Moore. He feels like he's got the league wrapped, and with Zeke coming back, that's a pretty complete team.
It's good. Excuse me. I don't know why my voice is going today. Hopefully I'm not getting sick. Anyway, I like a lot of that. Yeah, I mean, you've got some good matchups for week 15. Zeke scares me. With trusting him. I think you'd be probably better off if McCaffrey doesn't start next week, and then, I guess this week. So it sounds like this is the second week of. Did his playoffs start in week 13? Then is that what he's saying?
Sure. Might be
leagues in 2-week playoff matchups already. So I'm not sure if it started in week 13 and then is continuing this week, or if he's just starting this week, and it's either way. Yeah, I like a lot of those. I'd be a little nervous about starting Zeke against Washington next week. Cincinnati, though, this week, that's, it is Cincinnati, but it also is like the Cowboys offense this year. So that would make me a little bit nervous. But, and DJ Moore, I don't think DJ Moore is going to play.
Yeah, he's out this week.
Yeah. But you do. Yeah, Brady's got great matchups for the next 3 weeks. Derrick Henry has great matchups. Metcalf doesn't have great matchups, but he's DK Metcalf. And kind of same with Justin Jefferson. I don't love the matchups, but he's had a great rookie year. Hopefully, maybe for your sake, Davis gets the opportunity to start. I know AJ is not rooting for that as a Christian McCaffrey owner, but I think that's a good team. But you never know. Like, crazy things happen in the playoffs, and no matter how good your team is, all it takes is just one bad game. So you got to run through the finish line, run through the tape.
There you go. And he said, he's got week 13, 14. Then I think his other league's got 15, 16 for playoffs. So.
Okay. Yeah.
Go get that championship, man. You're right there. Oh my goodness. Go take that.
I do kind of like the concept of, I've never played in a league with 2-week playoffs, but I like that. I like that better. I think that benefits, good teams and good players more, because, you can always have a down week.
Right.
And if you've got the opportunity to make up for, or someone else can have an unusually crazy good week. I had that I don't know if it was last year or 2 years ago, where a team just had an absurd, all his players just, he didn't even have that good of a team. They just all went off that one week. And it was one where Houston's kicker had 24 points and stuff like that. So I like the concept of 2-week playoffs. If I was doing a league, I would probably consider that.
Yeah. He does bring up, though, he had an auction league this year, and C-Mac went for $90 out of $200. That guy didn't make the playoffs.
Yeah, that and I think I probably talked about that a lot on early podcasts or ones during the summer, where I think he went for 90 in a league or two that I was in, and I saw him. I don't know if he ever went below 80. Maybe he went for 75 to 80 in that range sometimes, but it was normally always 80 plus. And if he stays healthy, then yeah, sure. I mean, that would have been worth it. I mean, in the 3 weeks that he's played, he was putting in Christian McCaffrey numbers, and in a league or in a year where we didn't know, Henderson. Henderson last night or Thursday night, we didn't know that he was going to get 2 carries. So star running backs are now more valuable than ever. But if they get injured, then that is just you're sunk. And so I think people have to be really careful about that going forward, and a lot of people will probably learn that lesson from this year, where if you're gonna put that money into someone, it's a huge risk, and you also have to make sure that you get their backup. You have to make sure that there's a clear backup to get, and you get them and you keep them, regardless of how tempting it is to drop them for somebody else on the waiver wire. So think about all the Christian McCaffrey owners. Think about all the people that paid huge money for Saquon Barkley, all the people that paid huge money for Ezekiel Elliott, who has been in there. But, after Dak went out, his stats have tanked. Michael Thomas, all the time that he missed, half or more of the first round have just been busts this year. So you do have to think about, how you spend your money. And I think it gets trickier going forward, because again, we've seen the value of the star player. If you did draft a Dalvin Cook or a Derrick Henry this year, or an Alvin Kamara, the value that it can give you now more than ever in the era of these 3 and 4 man backfields. But you also we've also seen the risk this year too.
Yeah, exactly. And especially with even more early first rounders or whatever, you're losing CEH shot up. Mixon's been out for half of the year. Julio's been in and out, and he's not even starting this week, and Kittle's done for the year. That's basically half of the first and second round in most leagues. Right.
Yeah. And like we've mentioned with Kittle, with some of these guys going forward, you have to think about how much you want to, give for him in the future, because Kittle is just looking very prone to lower leg injuries, and stuff like that. So, next year, I'm trying not to I'm trying to focus on finishing out this year, but it's hard especially when it's been just a very meh season. It's hard to not start thinking ahead to okay, how's the landscape going to shift next year, with drafts and things like that.
Exactly. Well, Seth, so we got some questions in the chat. First off, Seth Sconias, thank you so much for tuning in. Says his PPR league pick 2, Devontae Parker, Amari Cooper, Deebo Samuel, Raheem Mostert, Miles Sanders, T. Higgins, J.D. McKissick, Curtis Samuel, or Sam Darnold's favorite player on earth, Jamison Crowder. He is stacked at wide receiver, to say the least.
Yeah, I think Amari is the easy one for me there. He's still getting, the last 3 games, 7, 8, 9 targets. He's had a touchdown in 2 out of 3. He's been over 80 yards in 2 out of 3. Basically, averaging about half a dozen receptions. I think he's the really easy one there. And then after that, I think it gets a little bit tougher because Debo's got a tough matchup. Miles Sanders has a tough matchup and is getting fewer and fewer carries every week. I think right now, with DJ Moore out, Curtis Samuel, Denver's not the easiest matchup either. But I might be inclined to lean Curtis Samuel. Crowder, I'm not. Let me check
He's playing Seattle.
Crowder is playing Seattle, but he's questionable.
That is true.
I haven't checked to see. He was a late addition to the injury report. I think Mims is out. So if Crowder plays and it looks like he's healthy, I mean, that's a pretty tempting matchup. But if it's iffy on his health, because he had missed some games there, he missed some games back in week 7 and 8. And then when he came back, he just wasn't getting, kind of the same amount of targets. Even last week, I mean, he caught 2 touchdowns. If he's iffy, I might even be tempted to go with Curtis Samuel because Debo, it's a tough matchup. I think you can make the argument for Debo too. Devontae Parker, it's a tough matchup with Kansas City, and he's just not the same quarterback or not the same wide receiver with Tua in at quarterback. If Fitzmagic starts, then maybe you'd consider him more. Mostert last week, that was a pretty split up backfield, and Washington's a tough run defense. Again, I mentioned Miles Sanders. So I think the order for me would be Amari's the easy number 1. And then with not knowing about Crowder right now, I would put Curtis Samuel at number 2, Debo at 3, and Jameson at 4, just ranking these a little bit. I know he only needs 2, but if Crowder looks healthy, maybe you go with him as the 2, but it's kind of risky. What do you think?
Yeah, I think if Crowder's healthy, I think he's definitely my 2. And I know Seattle's defense has gotten better in recent weeks, but they're still iffy on the back line. And since Crowder, he's more of a slant, go across the middle type guy. He's not a deep route guy. I don't think Jamal Adams is going to be taking him that much. Cooper's the easy one for me. Not Parker, not Sanders, definitely not Higgins in Cincinnati right now. McKissick is interesting to me. Being that this is PPR, I think he probably has the safest floor out of all of these guys because with Gibson out, he's bound to get a couple carries and he's bound to get about, 5 catches at least probably. So I think if you're projected to win, like if you've got a 57% or higher, I think McKissick might be my second player just because I think he's got the safest floor. He's got the least chance of busting out of all of these guys and just giving you 3. So I think McKissick is a safe pick. But if you're in a league where you need points and you need to maybe down 45%, 55%, I think you might have to go. I would definitely go Crowder as my number 2 there. And if he's questionable game time decision Sunday morning, I'm going Samuel instead, just because I think he'll get more volume, like Jared said. So I'd say if you've got a pretty safe win, I'd go McKissick. If you need points, go Crowder. If he's questionable, go Samuel. I know that's a long answer, but I think that's what I'm.
A lot of players. It's a lot of players, so it's deserving of a long answer. Yeah.
Right, exactly. Sukan C tuning in. Good to see you. It's been a minute. Says Mike Davis, Gaskin, Jonathan Taylor, pick 2, half-point PPR. I think I'm inclined to go Taylor and Taylor Davis. I don't know. What do you think?
This is tougher than I thought it would be. Yeah, kind of looking at what Mike Davis has done lately. I think Jonathan Taylor, it's not exactly like the Rams backfield. I think Jonathan Taylor basically is their Cam Akers, where they want to be able to feed him. They used a 2nd-round pick on him. Yep. The owner, Jim Irsay, wanted them to trade up to get him. So they are going to try to get him going. And we saw last week, I started Frank Gore in numerous spots, unfortunately, because I'm like, the Raiders' run defense is terrible, and they are. And Ty Johnson ran all over him. Unfortunately, what happened was Gore got a concussion on literally the first play of the game.
Right.
And so the points that he would have gotten went to Ty Johnson. So, so I think Jonathan Taylor is going to be able to run on him. It is more of a risk with him. I mean, because he does have a lower floor than Davis or Gaskin, who are going to be, the guy.
Yeah.
But I think the upside is just too good to go away from. The other one is really tough for me because Davis has actually kind of declined lately. Initially he was just kind of a carbon copy of CMC. And then now, even still getting like 19, 15 touches, is really not putting up that great of numbers. And Denver is, they've kind of slipped back to being more like a middle of the pack rush defense. So, the thing with Gaskin, of course, is he's playing Kansas City. So that is not a great game script. But, like we saw Josh Jacobs run all over Kansas City, and Gaskin does catch passes. He only had two targets the last game, his first game back. But prior to that, he was, he hadn't gotten fewer than 4 targets this season. I'm actually going to go with him. I think it's tough. I think you can make a case for Davis. But I think I'm actually going to go with Gaskin over him. So Taylor and Gaskin.
Yeah, I am in complete agreement with that. Taylor's the easiest one out of that. His schedule's incredible. They're giving him the ball. As soon as I saw Davis was going to have to go up against Denver's defense, I was immediately like, no, there's no chance I'm facing him. Because, like you said, he's had a rough stretch and he's kind of had a little bit of a resurgence, but that was playing Detroit and Minnesota, who are both middling of the pack defenses. And Denver, I mean, they've had a rough time because Drew Lock puts them on the field, for half the game, but they're still a much more of a force than the last teams that he's played. And before that, I think full point PPR, he had like 4 straight games with 8 points exactly. And I'm worried this is going to be another one. And Gaskin always somehow inexplicably will get you 12 points.
Yeah.
Sometimes a little bit more, rarely ever less. So I will go I'll go Taylor and Gaskin. I just love Gaskin's just safe floor, and Taylor's got such a good matchup here.
And I guess Seth says that his is PPR. So going back to his long question. That doesn't change my Amari pick. But it might boost McKissick up for me to number 2. I mean, the last game, I think he had 10 targets.
Something like that.
Let's see. Let's go back and look real quick. But I mean, he's getting in the games where, he had 10 catches on 10 targets, and then, he had games earlier this year, I think, where I don't remember if Gibson was out or if it was just the game script, but he had 14 targets one game, 15 targets one game. So PPR actually, I would actually maybe go McKissick. I mean, it's let's see. I mean, San Francisco, is a fairly tough run defense, but they're going to have to move the ball somehow. And so I might actually go with him.
All right. Sam Joshi in the comment section asks, Drake, Corey Davis, Mostert, or Debo at flex? And should I go Seattle's defense or the Saints defense? So let's take the first one. You got Kenyon, Corey Davis, Mostert, and Debo. I think I'm going Corey Davis. What about you, Jared?
I think it depends on Kenyon's health. He's questionable right now. If they say he's good to go, I'm probably starting him against the Giants' run defense. The Giants have gotten better as a whole, but I still would kind of like him pretty well. Corey Davis is very tempting. Corey Davis is very tempting because it's Jacksonville, But I think this is going to be such an easy matchup for them. It could easily be like a Derrick Henry game or an AJ Brown game or something, and then they don't need to keep throwing the ball. He had a great game last week, but they were trailing most of the time against Cleveland, and so he had 12 targets, 11 catches, 182 yards, and a touchdown. The previous week, he still had, he's had a safe floor this year. He had nearly 9 points. He had 8.5, but he only had 3 targets because they were winning most of that game in Indy. So Chris Carson ran all over the Giants, last week, and that was still that was on 13 carries. He had 65 yards, and then he added some in the passing game. He had 18.5 points. So I think if Kenyon Drake plays, and it sounds like he's healthy, I'm going with him. If not, then I would go Corey Davis.
I really love the Corey Davis at Jacksonville matchup. And then I remember Jacksonville, for some reason, Derrick Henry has some kind of vendetta against them and decides to just utterly embarrass them every single year. And I do not understand what it is, but that does worry me a lot that Tannehill's not going to throw much. Debo is interesting to me, but I'm a little bit concerned about how many targets he's going to get, especially with Ayuk really just kind of coming out of nowhere and being the number one receiver last week. And then Mostert, he's looked fine, but he's got a really tough matchup against, I think it's Washington this week. So I'll go with you on this one. Davis is probably still my number one, but if Drake is all systems go 100% come Sunday morning, running backs always have that kind of safe floor. So I'll go with you on this one as well. Todd Eldridge says he did just notice DJ Moore is out this week. So does he go Mike Williams, Deebo Samuel, or Marvin Jones Jr. full point PPR, Jared?
Ooh, that's a tough one. That's actually some good options all the way around there. So, Marvin Jones is, Kenny Galladay's out again. Yeah. Three of the last 4 games, Marvin's getting double-digit targets. I like him. It's really tough to go away from Mike Williams in that matchup with Atlanta. It's one of the golden matchups. I think Atlanta actually has given up the most. It's always like a competition with Atlanta or Seattle or somebody like that as to who's currently on top, who's most recently gotten blown out. But currently, let's see. I think it's Atlanta. Anyway, that's tough because Marvin Jones, the volume's going to be there. Even with Debo, that the volume's going to be relatively there. I think if you need to swing for the upside, then maybe go Mike Williams because the Packers are a pretty tough defense. I think Marvin Jones is going to get a ton of targets still because they are just going to have to give them to him. But they're a fairly tough pass defense. Usually the way you beat them is through the run. Washington's a fairly tough defense. I think if you're chasing points and you want to go for the home run pick, you go with Mike Williams against that Atlanta defense. Williams has had a couple of down games. He's going to be due for one of those, blow up games here in the next week or two. And he's got 2 great matchups the next couple weeks. So I think you're going to get one of those, but it is a risk. If you want to go the safer route, I think Marvin Jones and Deebo Samuel are probably on about the same floor level. But I would go Marvin Jones just because he's, they let Marvin Hall go. They've got TJ Hawkinson, but it's basically Marvin Jones and TJ Hawkinson in that passing game. Anyway, Mike Williams for upside, Marvin Jones if you're going with the floor. Yeah,
I think I don't think I could put that any better because you guys know I am probably the biggest Chicago Bears fan of Marvin Jones in history. But I just really worried Jair Alexander is going to be blanketed all over him this week. And DeAndre Swift, if he's coming back, there of course goes catches out of the backfield, more targets taken away from him. Williams really the only reason why I would go with him is because of the great matchup against Atlanta, and he really only does well in good matchups in terms of fantasy this year. So I will go with you on that one. And Debo, I'm just really concerned about against Washington. I'm just not sure how the 49ers are going to be able to handle them. They've kind of been a weird team offensively this year. So, yeah, I'll go Mike Williams number 1, Marvin Jones number 2. Controversial in the chat. Good to see you. Says pick 3 to start PPR. Jared's absolute favorite player to write about: Antonio Brown, Jarvis Landry, T.Y. Hilton, Hollywood Brown, Gabriel Davis, and Brashad Perriman. I think I'm probably leaning the first 3, Jared. AB, Landry, Hilton. What about you?
Probably so too. I realized that I need to come up with as we discussed, an off the cuff, Antonio Brown legal situation that could keep him from playing in this week's game. So let's see. I'll maybe wait till the end of the question on this to try to come up with that. But I think I agree with you. Hollywood Brown, the last couple of weeks he's come on, but I don't know if is he going to keep doing it every week? And Davis, I think has kind of been getting his off a little bit touchdowns, if I remember. Yeah. So the last couple games, he's not getting a ton of targets. It's almost a carbon copy each of the last 2 games. 4 targets, 3 catches. One he had 79, one he had 68, and both had a touchdown. So almost the exact same stat line. He's not getting a ton of targets. You can't really depend on that touchdown to be there, or at least you don't want to. Perryman, it's a good matchup against Seattle, and he's going to benefit from Denzel Mims being out. You can make an argument for him. But yeah, Antonio Brown, apart from last week, he did have he was down in terms of targets and stuff last week. Minnesota's a terrible pass defense. I think, Brady will be going back to him. Landry has finally come on. I don't know how much I love the Baltimore matchup. Their defense is not really what it's been, but when it's a Cleveland offense that's you never really know what you're going to get from Baker Mayfield week to week. So that does scare me a little bit. And then TY, TY, I called the Houston game. And I don't know, not every week's going to be Houston, but he 2 weeks from now he gets Houston again. So maybe you just leave him in. Maybe you just hope that he rolls on through. Maybe he gets the post Houston bounce and it carries over to the next Houston bounce. And so maybe it's like, what was it? Was it Mario or some game where you could do like the double jump, or something like that? So, so maybe it's like a double jump from TY, just like this one just kind of like carries him on into that next Houston matchup in week 15. So I would go with the same 3 with yours, unless there's a scenario where Antonio Brown is trying to visit a mall Santa and they tell him he's too old and
he's been on the naughty list.
He has, because if anybody's like the Santa probably has his photo there in his little kiosk of like, no, Antonio Brown's not getting presents this year. So he might assault a mall Santa and get arrested, then hiding on the roof of a Krispy Kreme, So.
Oh, I always enjoy that. Yeah, like I said, Hollywood's unpredictable. Davis, if it's PPR, Davis doesn't get the target share for me to start him, and Perriman is still on the Jets, and Crowder. Darnold really only has eyes for Crowder in the passing game, so yeah, Antonio, Landry, Hilton from me as well. And like I said, Jarvis Landry only comes on in the final 6 weeks of the season. You gotta murk it out and stick him on your bench for the first 8 weeks, but then you get to the last 6, and then he finally starts catching touchdowns. So there we go.
I did just get an update, and I'm not sure why people are still starting him, but for the 37%, the third of leagues that have Zane Gonzalez, the Arizona kicker, rostered, he is out for this week.
Oh, well, that came out of nowhere.
Yeah. It just says it's some back issue, so they downgraded him to out.
Okay. Well, good to know. Good to know. Seth Sconiaz also asks, pick one PPR. Jonathan Taylor, Mostert, Sanders, McKissick. For me, it's Taylor. Best matchup, best volume. Jared?
Same.
Yep. There we go.
Same.
Yep. Simple enough. Sukan C asks, Scary Terry score an F1 McLaurin, Godwin, A-Rob, or Brandon Ayuk. Sit one. This is half point PPR. I think I'm sitting Ayuk with the matchup this week. Trubisky loves throwing to Robinson. Godwin's got a great matchup, and Terry granted bombed last week, and he's going up against Arizona. I think he'll bounce back. What do you think, Jared?
Yeah, that's painful. That's that's an embarrassment of riches there to choose from. It's painful to sit one of those. For me, I guess it would be, either Terry or Ayuk, one of them going against the other, because Robinson and Godwin's matchups are just too good. Terry, he's got, with Alex Smith as quarterback, Alex Smith is reliable. Terry's getting a steady amount of, of targets and stuff. Ayuk too, though, is getting, a good bit. He's basically, floating around double-digit targets. That is a tough one for me. I might go Ayuk over Terry, just because I think Ayuk's got a little bit. He's getting about the same amount of targets, and I think he's got a better chance of finding the end zone. That's hard. It's a tougher matchup for him than it is for Terry. I would lean Ayuk over Terry just slightly. So I would go. So for me, the easy ones are Robinson and Godwin. It's almost a coin flip with Ayuk and Terry, but I would go Ayuk barely.
All right, there you go. Thomas H, do you think Russell bounces back against the Jets, even though the game might be in the rain? We always talk about the late season decline of Russell Wilson, but he has one of the golden matchups this week, the team that goes cover 0 on the final play of the game, which they will forever be known. And Seattle is coming off of probably the worst loss in Pete Carroll's history to a New York Giants team with Colt McCoy and Alfred Morris. So, Jared, do you think the Seahawks come out with, as Judah would say, fire in their belly this week and absolutely annihilate the Jets? What do you think?
I think it does depend. I think it does depend on the weather. I think the game we saw most recently, that Patriots Ravens game where it was just a downpour and just, no one could really do anything. We do talk about the Russ late season decline, and it is in full swing. But slightly in his defense, 2 of those 3 games, especially the Rams game in week 10, that's a really tough matchup. We saw what they did to Cam Newton Thursday night. And then, Philadelphia has actually come on as one of the better pass defenses sort of somehow late in the season. Yeah. And then the Giants have been, a fairly decent pass defense. So I think some of his problems lately are matchup based, and I think he can still exploit the bad matchups. But yeah, the rain does worry me. Odds are you probably don't have a better option if it does turn into a downpour. But if it was going to be heavy rain, I would probably be inclined, if I had some option like Justin Herbert or somebody like that, to maybe go with them. Otherwise, if it's not, if the weather's decent enough, then I think he will give you a good bounce back game.
Yeah. Yeah, I think I would agree with that. Russell, it's so hard to pass up that kind of a matchup for him, for Lockett, for Metcalf. They're playing the Jets. How do you pass that up? I think, in theory, he bounces back absolutely. And I think part of the reason why the Giants absolutely destroyed him, he got sacked 5 times last week. The Giants pass rush really got to him in the pocket. I don't know how much you pay attention to New York weather, but if it's absolutely brutal in New Jersey and East Rutherford this week, maybe not. I mean, Russell's still going to have a decent 30-yard rushing floor maybe for you to help you a little bit there. But I think barring an absolute monsoon like we saw in Baltimore versus New England, I think you have to start Russell. It's one of the best matchups you're going to get and probably the last great matchup you've got for Russell. And like Jared said, you may not have anyone better. I think it's hard to bench Russell in a matchup this good against the Jets coming off a loss that bad against the Giants. Controversial's got another question for us. Yes.
And I do have to say, I believe it's Control Versal.
Goodness.
He's being tricky with his name.
Okay.
I didn't catch that the first time either. And then I just looked at it again. I'm like, oh, it's Control Versal.
Yeah. Okay. Sneaky little play there. All right. Control Versal then asks Hayden Hurst, Zach Ertz, or Logan Thomas. All kind of boomer bust. I think I go Logan Thomas. I think he's got the safest floor because we know Hurts can get 0 and Ertz is sharing with Goddard. I think I go Logan Thomas here. What do you think, Jared?
I think my first question is, do you have all three of those guys on your roster? And if so, why? If you do, you can definitely drop at least one, if not two of those guys. I like Logan Thomas for the playoffs. He's going to have the Seahawks next week. Honestly, for this week, I do not like any of those guys because Hayden Hurst, 2 out of the last 3 weeks, has been at he put up a 1.4 point performance and as a goose egg, a 0 in 2 of the last 3 weeks. Zach Ertz has done nothing and gets Jalen Hurts in there. I mean, it can't really be a downgrade, maybe in theory, but I don't really trust, what he's going to do with a rookie quarterback when he hasn't done anything all year. Mm-hmm. And Logan Thomas, I like. I picked him up in the Listeners League. I don't like him this week. San Francisco's given up the fewest points to tight ends, so I would go see who is on your waiver wire. I think there's potentially some options out there on the waiver wire. I know like Mike Gesicki has been on some of mine. He's only about 25. He's 75% rostered, so he's available in about 25%. Fant is out there in some leagues. And then actually sort of an interesting pickup could be he's questionable, but it's sort of a messy situation because Irv Smith looks like he may be back this week and Kyle Rudolph may be out. And Tampa has not been a great defense against tight ends. They're giving up, I think, the 12th most fantasy points to tight ends. And Tampa, they're tougher on the run, so that forces teams to throw. If Irv Smith was out there and, it turns out that he's going to play and Rudolph is not, then I might give him a try again, or see if Gesicki was out there. I think that's a lot of that's some tough options to go with there for this week. I would go with Logan Thomas if it was not against the team that's given up the fewest amount of points to tight ends.
Yeah, if you've got all these three on your roster, I'm assuming that there probably isn't anything better in the tight end section. Like, I know we're in trouble when Cole Kmet is the number 1 waiver ad in one of your leagues. And look, as a Bears fan, I don't know how sustainable that is. So, yeah, if there's Jordan Akins and Tyler Eifert out there, and I mean, Eifert hasn't been terrible, but he's questionable this week. I think I go Thomas. I know it's the worst matchup for tight ends, but Alex Smith has been throwing to him quite a lot, and I think that's really my only reason for going with Logan Thomas here. It's just the target share that he's getting, I think, is better than the other two. And yeah, this is definitely assuming that you don't have a better matchup out there. But I mean, Pittsburgh was a bad matchup too, and he still put up 15. He got how many targets did he get that game? He put up 9 targets and caught all of them. Yeah. So I think I'll go Logan Thomas.
Out of those 3, I would too.
Yeah. Allied Rivals in the comment section asks, do we go with Rojo, Ronald Jones, or Kareem Hunt? This is tough. Kareem's going up against Baltimore. Chubb has almost completely usurped the backfield. It would help if I knew if this was PPR or not, but honestly, that's becoming less and less important because Kareem has gotten 6 targets in the last 3 weeks combined. So I think I go Rojo here. I think that's pretty easy. I mean, I know he's still splitting with Fournette, and he could tank at any moment, but I think he's definitely got a safer floor than. I mean, the matchups he's done bad with and done terribly with recently were against New Orleans and the Rams, and those are really tough matchups. So I'll go Rojo on this one. I don't like Kareem's volume, and I don't like his matchup.
Yeah, same for me. I mean, ever since week 4, basically Rojo has given you double digits except for 3 teams: the Rams, which is understandable, it's a great run defense; the Saints, which is understandable, which is a great run defense; and then weirdly the Giants. So I don't remember exactly what happened there, but so that's a strange one. But this is a fairly easy Rojo for me because Kareem Hunt, again, I don't know exactly what's happened to him. Seems like Cleveland's offense has gotten better. Maybe that's part of it, is they've gotten more well-rounded. But he's still getting carries, but it just doesn't, it's just not translating. And he had a safe floor. He had 10 points against the Baltimore Ravens in week 1. He had 13 carries. He had 72 yards. But this is an easy Rojo for me.
Yep. Sukan C says, thank you. You guys are awesome. Well, thank you very much. You're awesome too. Everyone in our comment section here today. Thank all
That's
of you.
right. That's right. And if you have the good sense to be listening to us, you are awesome.
There you go. The Chosen Rose coming back. Good to see you. Ask, do you trust Mark Andrews this week? Do we ever trust Mark Andrews anymore? Or do you go Noah Fant, who has a nice matchup against Carolina? What do you think, Jared?
I think unless you've got a really consistent performer at tight end, like a TJ Hawkinson, who's just consistently at right around like 10 to 13 points or so, I think you got to go Andrews. And I'm speaking from my own experience here because I drafted Andrews in a ton of leagues and now way more than I wish I had. But when he's on, Mark Andrews is going to give you some, Travis Kelce like numbers, but when he's not, then you're not going to get a whole lot. But Cleveland has given up the second most tight ends this week. Yeah. So I don't think this is the week to bench him. Actually, I mean, for the rest of the year, Andrews gets Cleveland, Jacksonville, and the Giants. And I think with his talent, that unless you have Travis Kelce or Darren Waller, in spite of the fact that Andrews has been really inconsistent this year, apart from those 2 guys, I don't think there's anybody that I would bench him for with the matchups that he has.
Yeah, and even with Fant, like I have Fant in our listeners, like I have Fant. He never goes over 8 points, like inexplicably. Yeah. He's one of those guys where it's like if he gets a touchdown, then it'd be a good week, and he just hasn't. And I mean, he's got a good matchup against Carolina. This is still Denver, Mr. Unpredictable City. I think Andrews is definitely the safer pick. I mean, if Lamar throws to anyone anymore, it's going to Andrews right now and some Hollywood. But Fant is just, his floor is safe at 4 and his ceiling is safe at 7. So I would absolutely go Andrews here. Absolutely. Ryan N., our resident Bucks fan, says, hello, what's up, Ryan N.? And everyone else, let us know what your favorite NFL teams are in the comment section as well. We'd love to know. Sukan C., 49ers defense or Ryan N.'s Tampa defense for the playoffs. This is interesting. Tampa is one of my stashes in a couple of my leagues for the playoffs. I like their matchups. But what do you think, Jared? 49ers have been kind of a sneakier play. In Tampa, they put up some nice points. What do you think?
I mean, I might not mind even potentially rotating them if you can afford to have both of them. You know, I think it's just kind of tough to see like this week. You know, I mean, Tampa has, let's see how many straight weeks. It's been a while since Tampa has really done a whole lot defensively. You know, they're pretty consistently giving up 23 plus points. They're not really getting touchdowns. You know, San Francisco has a couple of good matchups the next couple of weeks with Washington and then Dallas. So I know, you know, like Minnesota has come on pretty well. So I don't really love the Minnesota matchup, even though it looks good in Yahoo. It's green in Yahoo. And then the following week, Atlanta looks pretty good, you know, especially if Julio Jones ends up being out. But that's kind of the thing you're not really going to know until next week. Like, is Julio going to play or not? Because if Julio doesn't play, I would probably fire up that Tampa defense, because without him, the Falcons just don't do much of anything. So I think this week for me, it's probably the 49ers. And then next week, if you can afford to stash both of them, then maybe, just wait and see if Julio plays. What do you think?
Yeah, I think for the playoffs, it's really tough. I think you're right. I think it comes down to whether Julio plays. 49ers have a great matchup against Dallas, and I definitely would not want to pass that up. But assuming you get, and like you said, if you get there, that doubles your money essentially. But then they get the Cardinals, who at that point are probably going to be fighting for a playoff spot.
Right.
I don't know if I want to mess with that. So if I had to choose one, I think I'd rather take a chance on Tampa. Just because I feel like they've got a better schedule overall. But if you have, like you said, if you have the luxury of being able to switch them out, then 49ers next week, Tampa in the championship against a Detroit team that is just such a weird team this year. Yeah.
The Tampa game or the Week 16 matchup does make, a big difference. If though, I'll throw this out there for people, like if though, like you end up in your fantasy championship and you're just, struggling for someone to play, and maybe even now, if you're already looking to stash somebody now, you could take a chance on maybe the Houston defense, because Houston gets Cincinnati at home in Week 16, and Houston hasn't, they haven't done a whole lot. But who also hasn't done a whole lot is the Cincinnati offense under the post Joe Burrow era. So that would be one to consider. But yeah, I agree. If like you can only stash one, Tampa. But I like to have two defenses to where, I can pick my best matchup for each playoff game.
There you go. Math Quest. Good to see you. Always good to have Math Quest in the chat. Ask Gio or Miles Sanders. 3 weeks ago, I would have said Sanders easy, but both of them are having a rough time recently. Jared, would you rather go Gio in a messed up Bengals offense or Sanders with a tough matchup?
Neither. Oh my goodness. Yeah, I hate them both, and I have to go Miles Sanders in some leagues. I'm going to go Miles Sanders. Gio and that Dallas. Obviously, with it being Dallas, that's a nice matchup for Gio. But I mean, he got 12 carries last week against Miami. He had been in single digits the 3 weeks before that. Man, this is a really tough one. Miles Sanders was trending down before they even signed Jordan Howard. And then now it's really brutal. You do still have the chance of, we saw some games earlier this year where like Miles Sanders played Pittsburgh and Baltimore. And he delivered points because he broke some big runs, and the same thing with the Rams. So, you can, in some ways, I think, Gio's a little bit safer because the Cowboys' run defense is terrible. And he's going to get the ball some. But, Miles Sanders has that opportunity for that home run play all the time. And, I'll say like with Jalen Hurts, it introduces a lot more uncertainty there, but the way Sanders was trending with Carson Wentz, is it going to hurt that much? I don't know. So I would probably go with Sanders for the possibility of the big play, even though I think he's got a slightly lower floor than Gio.
Yeah, I think this might be one of the few times I disagree with you on this episode. I think I'd go Gio just because I think he's had some brutal matchups recently. Pittsburgh, Washington, Miami, those are really tough defenses to go against. So I think I might go him in a great matchup this week. But like you said, Miles Sanders is going to be a whole new look Philly offense. I am worried about I think his goal line carries might evaporate now with Jordan Howard because that was literally his role in Miami, was run it out from 5 yards. I think I might go Gio. I think he's the safer play this week. But yeah, I mean, between the two of us, which one finished first in the RotoHackers Listener League? So choose the device you want to take.
It's okay. You don't have to defer to that. I agree with you. I do think Gio is the safer play. And that is a good point about the matchups. I think that like the Giants matchup mixed in there. Yeah. I think part of it too, I would have to look and see. I think part of it was that he had something that was hurt, and maybe that's getting better for him, because I think part of the problem, the reason that he was losing carries to Pirine, let's see, I think was he had some sort of little banged up. Yeah, I guess prior to it looks like week 12, he had been kind of banged up a little bit. Maybe that was from concussion, being in the concussion protocol. So I guess maybe he was there in between games because he didn't miss any games. So oddly enough, so maybe, maybe he's out of that and getting more opportunities. It's a coin flip for me in some ways. So I think you've got a good case with Gio there.
Well, I had no idea how to pronounce this name, but the Chosen Rose helping me out here says his name is Daniel. Thank you for that. So Daniel asked, which do you think is the best football player in the world? I think it's it's not the kind of football we're referencing here. Do you know anything about what we would call soccer, Jared? Are you a soccer guy at all?
Every 4 years or so, what's funny is I've seen a ton of high school soccer.
Really?
Not that much, right? Because I used to be a sports editor, so I've seen a ton of like high school and college soccer, way more than pro. So obviously, I know the names, at least half the names in the first half of these names in this list. But I am in no way qualified. I would be like the baseball fan who doesn't really pay attention to the game anymore, and they're still like voting Derek Jeter in because they think he's the best shortstop out there. So I will admit when I am not qualified to answer a question, and this is one of those times.
Yeah. I do follow soccer somewhat. I think if I had to choose one, I'll answer this really quick. I would go right now Robert Lewandowski, because his goal scoring to appearances ratio is absolutely insane. And if Bayern wins the Champions League again, I think that really just cements it. Messi's having a rough time in Barca. Neymar and PSG, they're not bad. Mbappe, he's good, but he's young. Zlatan is kind of just a substitute in AC Milan right now. And Ronaldo is the closest one, and that's the one the Chosen Rose goes with. And if we see a Juventus versus Bayern Champions League final, that'd be awesome. But I'll go Lewandowski because his goals to appearances ratio is crazy.
Oh, okay, show off. I guess your take was slightly more informative than mine, but not by that much.
Right. It was close. I tried to lower. Just go.
Yes, thank you for speaking in layman's terms for the soccer morons like me. Yeah.
Yes. I tried to put it in terms everyone would understand. Oh, let's get back to NFL football though. Bobby Shmurda, good to see you, man. Asked bench 1 PPR Swift, Gaskin, Kamara, Jefferson, Thielen, or DeAndre Hopkins. Watch Jared use so many terms that I've never heard of to answer this question to get revenge for.
No, I'm just wowed by his options here. Yeah, this is a good team. Wow, you only have to bench one of those. Okay, well, there's a possibility that the decision could get made for you, depending on Swift, because we don't really. It's looking like he's going to play, but as we've said repeatedly this season, coaches are bigger liars than ever. And in Detroit land, where oh yeah, Kenny Galladay's he might play this week. You especially can't trust them. So that would be the first. That would be probably the first issue that could potentially come up. So if he does. If he does, it gets a little bit tougher. Obviously, Kamara is fantastic, and he kind of bounced back with, last week after not doing too much the first couple of games with Taysom Hill in there. It's really tough to bench him, even with a fairly difficult matchup and Taysom Hill in there for one more week. Jefferson, has been more reliable lately, but I mean, the last month he's been a stud. Yeah. I think him being a rookie, there's still a possibility that he could have a down game. But I think if the decision's not made for you, if it looks like Swift, I would look to make sure that it sounds like Swift is going to get a full load. Because that Green Bay matchup is just so nice. If he does, if it sounds like that, he's in there, I guess I would bench Gaskin. Even though I promoted him in another, a previous question, out of all those good options, I think his ceiling is a little bit limited, and there's a chance for the Chiefs to get out way ahead of the Dolphins and also limit his floor. So that's my answer.
Yeah, and as much as it annoys me sometimes to start 2 wide receivers on the same team in my lineup, it's been annoying. I've started Evans and Godwin, and you just worry all week what happens if one of them gets targets, one of them doesn't. I've had Ridley and Julio, but I mean, Jefferson and Thielen are going to be in a shootout, I think, against Tampa. Cook has had a tough time against good run defenses, so I think Cousins is probably going to be airing it out a little more. I think you're right here. If Swift is fully healthy, he's going up against a terrible run defense in Green Bay. You got Alvin Kamara. You can't bench him. Can't bench Jefferson. Can't bench Thielen. Can't bench Hopkins. The only thing with Gaskin is that Yahoo is in half-point PPR. This is the most accurate they have ever been with a 13 fantasy point prediction for him, because he perpetually will get 13 points per week. It's just, in this case, who's going to boom or bust? Like if Jared said, if Swift isn't 100%, I would go sit him instead of Gaskin. But if Swift's all systems go, then I would say Gaskin, just because he's got the lowest ceiling here. Easily the lowest ceiling. I think he's the only person out of all these guys who hasn't hit 20 points this year. So I think that says it all for me there. Bobby Shmurda also asked Justin Herbert, who has the benefit of getting an absolutely golden matchup against Atlanta, or Tom Brady, who has another great matchup against Minnesota this week.
Yeah, that's a tough one. Embarrassment of riches again there. And that's almost kind of a coin flip. I really don't know. I'm curious, while you're giving yours, I'm going to look it up to see how they're ranked in Yahoo and ESPN, because I would have to imagine that, both are bordering on, well, Brady's maybe not quite top 5, maybe is, but I would say Herbert's top 5 and Brady's like top 7. Let's see how correct I am. But go ahead. Yeah.
Man, I think it's hard to pass up Herbert here. Oh my God, just the absolute demolition that the Chargers suffered against the hands of the Patriots last week. I think they have to have a bounce back week just for their team to get morale back in shape. I'm expecting Eckler to have a very, very nice matchup, catching passes out of the backfield this week. Keenan Allen will probably have himself a game. This is why we suggested Mike Williams earlier. I really, really like Brady this week. He's just Tampa coming off a bye week. Brady coming off a bye week is always very, very difficult to face. And Tampa does have Tampa does have a great chance of absolutely exploding this week. Right now, I think I'll go Justin Herbert. I love his matchup. He's throwing it a lot, and the thing with the matchup is that if the Bucs do get out to a big lead early, I think they do have a good chance of just kind of sticking to the ground with Rojo and Fournette, which I don't know. The Bucs run game is really weird. Some games they'll just run it 70% of the time, and other times they'll run 3 times and then let Brady do whatever the heck he wants. So I think I'll go with Herbert here because Brady, you either get good Brady or bad Brady, and I can't pass up that Atlanta matchup this week.
So I was pretty close. Justin Herbert in Yahoo's rankings is 5 overall nice. in the composite rankings, and Brady is 8.
Close.
What's interesting is Andy Behrens, who I think is one of the better fantasy analysts out there, has Brady at 7 and Herbert at 8. So he actually has Brady one above Herbert. ESPN is pretty similar. They've got Herbert at 5, and then they've got Brady down at 10. But in Matthew Berry's rankings, who again I think Matthew Berry's another one of the best analysts out there, it's closer. It's Herbert's at 4 and Brady's at 6. So that's kind of along my lines too. I think they are neck and neck this week. I think AJ had a good analysis of there being a possibility that, Tampa could just, run the ball more, with Rojo or something like that. So I think I would go with Herbert too. I think Brady might potentially have a higher ceiling because I think there's more potential for that game to turn into a shootout. Sure. Brady's had 3 games where he's been at 30 plus points. And Herbert, I believe maybe has only had 1. Yes. So Herbert's only hit more than like 27 plus in 1 game where he had 38 against Jacksonville. So because this is such a painful choice for me, I'm going to qualify it with Herbert being the safer play. But if you need to swing for the fences and upside, I think Brady could maybe get you 30 plus.
Well said. And I forgot to respond to this earlier. Sukan C said he does have both the 49er and Tampa defense rostered. For us, we said you keep them both, right?
Yeah. That's what I do with as many places as I can. Like I picked up the Rams defense in a ton of places weeks ago. Because I wanted them for their week 15 matchup against the Jets. But even though they did pretty well against Russell Wilson the first time, I probably won't play them in Seattle in week 16. So I think usually it's worth having 2 defenses unless you've got one that just has 2 golden matchups back to back. It's worth having 2 rather than having, like a 5th wide receiver or something that you're probably not going to, put in your lineup. So
there you go. DeAndre Chris, good to have you tuning in. And we got 2 of Jared's favorite tight end plays, TJ Hawkinson or Mark Andrews. Hawkinson is definitely the more consistent one, but Andrews has a golden matchup this week. Jared, who would you go with in this scenario?
Yeah, that's tough. Because it is a tough matchup for TJ Hawkinson. The first game, he still did pretty well. He had 8.2 points. I mean, for a tight end this year, that's pretty solid. I would go Andrews though. I mean, if you drafted him, you spent I'm not justifying this for why you start him. But I mean, it is Mark Andrews. It's the second best possible matchup. I think, let's see, first time week 1, week 1, he had 5 catches for 58 yards and 2 touchdowns. And, you know, and Cleveland still, that wasn't a fluke. Cleveland has given up the second most to tight ends. I think you still go with Andrews. I know Hawkinson is more consistent. If they both had, you know, green light matchups, then maybe you could justify Hawkinson. But I think with it being the tougher matchup for me, I'm going with Andrews because I do have that decision in some leagues.
Yep. And he does bring up that this is not PPR, by the way. I don't think that changes anything.
It wouldn't change a whole lot. I mean, but Hawkinson is getting, you know, I think more, well, it depends. I mean, some games he's still only around 4 targets, but he does seem to have like a little bit more to get up around, you know, 7 targets or so than Andrews has, where Andrews has been more touchdown dependent. But yeah, it wouldn't really change much of anything.
Yep, I think I'll agree with you. I'll go Andrews. Controversial back again asks pick 2: David Montgomery, Jonathan Taylor, CEH, Gaskin, or Wayne Gallman. Easiest one for me, Jonathan Taylor. And then after that, I think I'd go David Montgomery. He's exploded in 2 good matchups, and he's got another one this week. CEH, he hasn't been bad. Gaskin's the safest one. He'll get you 13 guaranteed. And Gallman, I mean, he's been good. Jared brought him up a couple weeks ago. He's been good in tough matchups, good in decent matchups, but I don't think I can. I mean, it's just like all green lights go here for David Montgomery and Jonathan Taylor for me.
Yeah, same for me. And what's funny is, like, as I look at this, like, David Montgomery is going to play himself into probably a much higher draft position than he deserves next year, because he's had 22.8 and 25.1 over the last 2 weeks. And then he finishes the season with Houston, Minnesota, and Jacksonville. Or he finishes the fantasy season. And then in week 17, then he's got Green Bay again that he lit up for 22.8. So he's probably going to get drafted way too high, because he's going to finish with like 5 straight games of, you know, 5 or 6 straight games of 20 plus points. Yeah, I don't need to say any more about that. Yeah, Montgomery and Taylor for me. Yep.
There you go. Allied Rivals brings up, we'll be streaming around 2 today. Check it out. Yeah. Go ahead and check that out.
That's right.
That appears like that's all of the questions that we've got. If you haven't already, I'm going to go ahead and put this in the chat. Everyone, thank you guys so much for all the questions. If you got any more, be sure to throw them in. Join our Discord as well. We got a lot of great guys. Judah and I are typically out there, typically answering questions. We got a lot of people talking about fantasy football, and Jared will be up there eventually, right, Jared?
I do need to join. Yeah, maybe as life gets slightly less crazy for me, I can jump in there too. Yep.
There you go. And DeAndre Chris bringing in another question for us. Gallman or Gaskin flex, the battle of 2 of the most consistent running backs there has been this year. Jared, what do you think? Gaskin gets Kansas City this week, so he's got the tougher matchup, and Gallman gets Arizona, which is also respectably tough, but he's been good in brutal matchups even. What do you think?
Yeah, I've got to go with Wayne Gallman. He's one of my favorite finds of the season. Just no one was really, you know, respecting him, and so I picked him up in some leagues, and 6 straight weeks of no fewer than 12.7 points. You know, the other 5, he's been at 13.5 or higher, you know, and like you said, he's a little bit similar to Gaskin. He's not, you know, blowing the doors off, but, you know, the 2 weeks prior to the last game against Seattle, where they had Colt McCoy, you know, at quarterback, he had 18.5 and 16.6. So he's had a little bit more of a ceiling. Arizona's run defense is not that great. Daniel Jones is supposed to be back this year. This season. Okay. I'll try this a third time this week.
There you go.
So I'm going to go with Gaskin. I think, you know, game script could be a little friendlier too, because the Giants defense has gotten better. You know, and Kyler Murray's been on a little bit of he's played tough defenses with the Patriots and Rams, but he's kind of been down a little bit lately. I'm going Gallman over Gaskin.
Yeah, I like Gaskin, but and even if you just look at their yardage too, Gallman is definitely getting more of the passing work as well. Gaskin's been good because especially in half point PPR, he'll either get 100 yards or 60 yards and a touchdown or 5 catches for 40 yards and 60 yards. Like there's never a universe where all of that comes together and he gives you 25 points. Like that never happens. Gallman, it did worry me a lot that Alfred Morris was vultured 2 touchdowns from him last week, which was a little bit annoying for New York. But yeah, the Giants offense is clicking on all cylinders. I don't know how Tua and the entire Dolphins offense is going to look against arguably the best team in the league in Kansas City. So I'll go with Jared on this one. I'll say Wayne Gallman here.
Yeah, I forgot about that Alfred Morris touchdown vulturing, and that nonsense needs to stop.
It was fun to see Morris back. It's been a minute from him.
Yeah, it was definitely like a retro thing. Like I just perpetually think of him being in Washington. I just saw this isn't meaningful in any way, shape, or form, but it's just kind of interesting, that we had the blow up of in that Ravens Cowboys game where Des Bryant got pulled off the field because he had a inconclusive test for COVID. They went and tested him. He tested positive. They wouldn't let him play. So he, said he was going to quit. They just said that since then, it's been nothing but negative tests from him. So he missed that game for poor Des. He missed that game for nothing.
No. Oh, there goes Dez's revenge game. Oh my goodness.
You know how badly he would have wanted to have been in that game. Oh, and I mean, it would have been bad enough if it was, if he legitimately had to miss it, but then just a mistake that he had to miss it.
That's brutal. Rest in peace, Dez's revenge game. Tough break. Controversial coming back. Pick 3, Tyreek. In a tough matchup, Deontay Johnson, Marvin Jones, T.Y., Chase Claypool, and Josh Allen's kind of favorite target, Cole Beasley, who gets 30 points every 3 weeks. Yeah. What do you think, Jared?
I mean, if you told me that Tyreek Hill was going to get quadruple teamed, I think you would still have to start Tyreek Hill. I think last week was his second worst game of the season. He did have a 4-point game at Buffalo inexplicably in week 6. Last week, his 11.8 points were his second worst of the season. Down significantly from his 51.4 game against Tampa Bay. So Tyreek Hill, I don't buy into the idea that there are a lot of must start your studs, but there are some, and you have to start him.
Yeah.
Deontay Johnson, his target volume is pretty consistent. So I think you've pretty well got to roll him out there. He basically in games, I don't remember if there was a game one of these games. I'm not sure if he got injured in or not, but I think basically most of at least 2 of the 3 games where he only had a handful of targets were ones where he left early with injury. Otherwise, he's had 10 targets in every game. Yep. You can't go away from volume like that. Yeah. Let's see, Marvin Jones, T.Y., Claypool, Beasley. So then I think then it comes down to me for Marvin or Claypool. I would probably start Claypool just in case, maybe it's the game where, Claypool scores 2 touchdowns or whatever. Cole Beasley is a little bit harder to predict if it's going to be like 3 points or, 15 or something like that. Marvin Jones, Marvin Jones has the volume. You can make a case for him. I did in an earlier question. T.Y., I like T.Y., but out of those choices, when most of his season has not been that consistent, it's kind of hard for me to go with him. So, Claypool was down last week against Washington, which is a tough pass defense. and he had Baltimore the week before that. I would probably go with Claypool, but I think that third one is really the tough one, where you can make a case for a lot of those guys. The more I think about it, maybe I would go Marvin Jones since he is the one there. Yeah. I would say though, I would say people should probably defer to whoever you're going to pick as the third one though.
Yeah, like you said, Tyreek is ridiculously consistent. He's easy. Deontay, also ridiculously easy. He's, like you said, Jared, he's been healthy. Every game he's been healthy, 10 targets or more. Beasley, if John Brown, do you know the status of John Brown right now? Is he coming back?
I think he is still IR until I think week 15 is the week that he's targeting to come back, but I'll double check real quick.
All right, sounds good. So even if John Brown's coming back, then Beasley's stock goes even lower for me. And if he isn't, it's still a little bit iffy going up against Pittsburgh. Ty, I like him, but I think I like the other options here better between Jones and Claypool. And if this is full point PPR, I think I'm going Marvin Jones because of his target share. I think that's where he's going to get a lot of his points from, even if he doesn't catch a touchdown. Claypool typically gets you 4 catches a game. His points a lot of times come from touchdowns, especially when Deontay and Juju are, all systems go. But if this is half point or no PPR, I think Claypool is easy for me because the Steelers cannot run the ball to save their lives. They just are having a horrible time keeping it on the ground. So I think I'll go Tyreek, Deontay, and even though it's on the same team, I think I'll go Chase Claypool for the last one. And then I would consider MJJ if it's full point PPR, but even then, I like Claypool, and Big Ben just is going to sling it all over the field, which if Swift is healthy, we might see a game where the Lions run the ball a lot as well, even though their interim head coach wants them to be more fast-paced. He doesn't want them to be the slower offense they had under Matt Patricia. So I'll go Tyreek, Deontay, Claypool, just because I think Pittsburgh's going to be throwing it so much this week against Buffalo in a shootout on Sunday Night Football. And he brings up, this is standard. So yeah, that just solidifies it for me. Tyreek, Deontay, Claypool.
Sounds good.
All right. Well, it looks like we've gotten through all of the questions here. We've gone through an hour and a half of fantasy advice and commentary and discussion. Jared, is there anything else that you want to bring up this week?
I'll kind of, one last question. And I'll say an hour and a half is pretty good for, especially for there being 2 of us, because normally part of what takes longer is, having a third person to, answer questions. So we've gotten through a lot of material in, to provide an hour and a half. So one thing I'm going to say is a guy that I'm seeing getting dropped a lot that I would not be dropping him. I'm actually trying to pick him up in places, is Devontae Booker, because obviously he did not do well in his spot start against the Jets defense. Jacobs is iffy for this week, and it looks like he may play. But the problem is, the Jets' run defense has been okay. And then the Colts' run defense is pretty good too. So regardless, neither one of those are really great matchups. But what we've seen, like we talked about before, is these lingering injuries where coaches say, oh, this guy's going to be back. This guy's going to be back. This guy's going to be back. And then he doesn't come back, or he's out another week or whatever. And week 15, the Raiders get the Chargers. They get the Chargers run defense, which is a bottom 10 defense.
Yeah.
To the run. So, if you are, needing a flex play or an RB2, I think it's worth picking up Booker if you've got a spot to stash him to see maybe if he ends up, getting that start against the Chargers or something. Because, even if, say, Jacobs comes in and plays this week, he could, re-injure it and be back out again. We saw that with Christian McCaffrey. Again, my condolences, AJ. We saw that with him. So I think for that matchup, especially if you've already qualified for the playoffs and you're just looking ahead to your matchups there, it's worth, stashing him if you've got a place to stash him, just in case he could get that matchup.
Yeah. Very well said there. And like Jared brought up earlier, Zane Gonzalez is going to be out. And this is just kind of something that I've been reinforcing for weeks on end. Check your kicker, because if you've got Prater or Zane Gonzalez, there's just so many other kickers out there who have put up really nice points. Thinking Dustin Hopkins, he's gotten 10 plus points in 4 straight weeks. Rodrigo Blankenship's always consistent. Kami Fairbairn's putting up decent points now that Houston's offense is finally scoring again. Go out, check your kicker. If they've been sitting around 4 or 5 points, go get someone new. And I know a lot of people love Will Lutz and the Saints offense, but look, the one problem with the Saints offense is they score too many touchdowns. So all Lutz is getting is extra points. Go get those kickers who are kicking a lot of field goals. Be on the lookout for guys like Fairbairn and Hopkins. I've been saying that for maybe this might be like 3rd week in a row saying that. Maybe even Jason Myers in Seattle. He's been iffy, but he's got a good matchup. Check your kicker, because you can say, oh, if only my running back had gotten that first down, I would have won. No, if you had a different kicker, that is what can decide you a game. So check your kicker.
It's a great point. There's really no reason for Will Lutz in 10-team leagues. Yeah. There's really no reason for Will Lutz or Justin Tucker to be 100%. On fantasy rosters this season. And Harrison Butker is pretty iffy. I mean, he's had some good games, but he's had a lot of down games too. It just goes back to we did get a kicker question there from Controversial.
Perfect.
You don't want to roster people and start people based off of names.
Right. Exactly.
So Joey Sly or Rodrigo Blankenship, I think that one's pretty even too. Sly the last couple of weeks has been around 10 points. Raiders are kind of a middle of the pack defense. Rodrigo's, it's been a while. He's been quieter after that first start. They've gotten better at putting the ball in the end zone. And the tough thing for him is he's not like kicking kicks of 50 plus yards. Like basically they have to get it. So I'm going to give the edge to Sly because Indy's got a little bit better at putting the ball in the end zone. And Rodrigo's not at a point yet where he's able to really kick 50 plus.
Yeah, I think I'll agree with that. Neither of them are the most consistent kickers. They both had their share of missed field goals this year. Granted, one of Sly's was a 65-yard attempt, so respect for trying that. But I'll go with Joey Sly as well. He's been very, very good recently. They're going up against Denver, who allows the number 1 points to kickers, whatever that means. But that's what they've done, and he's put up points recently, 10 points in back-to-back weeks. So I agree with you on this one. I think we go Joey Sly.
All right.
And there we go. That's going to wrap us up, ladies and gentlemen, on the one and only RotoHackers podcast. Judah Buddha will be back on Tuesday, of course, to give advice and humor and everything else we love from our regular host. He'll be back
if he remembers.
If
he remembers that we do podcasts on Tuesdays.
Exactly. Thank you, everyone, for tuning in. We had a great comment section. We love discussing and talking with you guys. Our Discord link is still in the live chat. I'll just repost that just in case one more time. Be sure to join. We love just talking about fantasy and football and all that stuff with all you guys. Thank you, everybody, so much for tuning in. Jared, anything else to say?
Good luck if you're in your playoffs, and if you're not, good luck on making it. So it's been a rough season. It's been a wild and crazy season, but you're almost at the finish line. So keep playing that waiver wire. Keep, if you're still in contention, then finish it out.
Yep, there you go. And with that being said, hopefully we'll see you guys Tuesday night. We're here 9-8 Central, and maybe Saturday morning after that. Good luck this week, ladies and gentlemen. We'll see you next time on the RotoHackers podcast.